Hello there, I'm Dark Shades, broadcasting out the UK. Welcome to my channel. First time you're passing through, put the thumbs up if it resonates with you, thumbs down if it doesn't. You can share if you think somebody else might be on the same wavelength, and you can subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, so you know when I upload. I thought I would talk about men who repeat themselves. I mean, how many of you women have listened to your man repeat himself over and over again in your life? Why does he keep repeating himself? Is he in a time warp or something? And yet men do. I think women probably do as well on certain occasions, but it's not as often as the men do. The men do it all the time. And I used to get so frustrated when I used to experience it, and I didn't realize that it kind of goes right through the gamut. I don't know if it's just black men that do it or if it's white men that repeat themselves. I don't know. I haven't been in a conversation long enough to know if a white bloke repeats himself to the same degree a black person does. But I know black guys, I go to my friends' houses and it seems to be the same thing. So I thought to myself, why do they keep repeating themselves? It's not like they have dementia. It's not like they're drunk. I mean, some of them might be, or that they have mental issues. So why do they repeat themselves over and over again? Is it because they think that you're not listening? Is it because they've forgotten that they've said it to you? Is it because they think you don't understand what they're saying? Well, I kind of came up with a few suggestions, shall I call them suggestions, of why I think men repeat themselves. I think, first of all, it's because the woman doesn't appear to be listening. And I think in a lot of relationships, once you get used to your partner, you kind of anticipate what he's going to say. And then you kind of switch off, don't you? Or you kind of hear it. And then if it's something that sounds like it's something they've said before, you kind of tune out. And I think when a man repeats himself, it's like he's trying to determine whether or not you've paid attention. So if you said to him, "Oh look, why do you keep repeating yourself?" He'd probably say, "Oh, I didn't realise I'd said it before, or I didn't realise you were listening." So it's an indirect way of them, number one, checking whether or not you're listening, or two, sometimes they just want you to help resolve something that they've got on their mind. So if they're talking about a particular topic and they actually repeat it the next day, you have to stop and think, okay, he said this to me twice. What is it about this topic that is important to him? And then maybe you could ask him, number one, do you realise you said that to me before? Is there a reason why you've said it again? Is there something you don't understand about what you're saying? Or you can try and get a little bit deeper, because I think until they resolve it in their head, they're going to keep repeating it like a bad record. Sometimes it's based on a traumatic experience in the past. Sometimes it's a wonderful experience that they want to relive. But whatever it is, for the person listening to somebody who repeats, it can be really irritating and frustrating. You'll find older people do that, the elderly. And I think we're a bit more forgiving with the elderly, because we know that, their memory might be going, and we know that they're holding on, and it's their way of trying to prove that they can still remember things. So they kind of hold on to memories and incidences, and they'll repeat them over and over, because it's their way of saying, yes, I've still got my faculties, I can still articulate this incident. But when you've got healthy young men or younger men and they're repeating, you don't make that excuse for them, because you don't understand why they keep repeating themselves. So sometimes it's because nothing's going on in their lives. They're trying to make what they're saying interesting, and have forgotten they've said it before. Have you been in that situation where, you're kind of talking to somebody, it's getting a bit boring, you're trying to get off of the phone, and then they bring up the same thing again to try and keep you involved in the conversation, but because they don't realize they've told you before, it's even worse. You're more likely to say, oh, God, I'm definitely getting off the line now, because I'm not going to have him telling me that story over and over again. So women, if men repeat, try to listen all the way through, try to unravel what he's saying and help him to resolve it in his mind, whatever it is. Unless, of course, you've got these narcissistic conversationalists who try to monopolize the conversation. You have some people, they just literally talk for the sake of talking. They don't give you a chance to say anything edgeways, and they'll repeat just to either get on your nerves or to capture you, keep you engaged in that conversation. It's almost like torture. So some things are repeated due to post-traumatic stress, as I've said before, but some are happy memories. And you'll find some men, because they are more emotional, even not on the outside, but internally, they're more likely to relive those situations and try to come to their way of coming to terms with it, really. But because as women, we're talking to our friends and we're telling everybody about our situations, we get it out. But men don't have that many outlets. They might have, if they're older men, they might have their children to talk to, or their siblings. But if you're close to them, you're the only other person that they can have that outlet to. So they kind of talk to you, and because they don't remember whether or not they've said it to their daughter or their sibling, they'll tell you the situation over again. And you have to kind of be patient and try to see whether or not it's something that needs a question, rather than say, oh my God, not again. He said that about bloody 3 times. I've heard that story 3 bloody times. You can kind of think to yourself, okay, what is it about what he's telling me that might be important to him? And see if there is something. I used to have somebody who always used to talk about the dances in the 70s. And it was always the same story. And I used to say, why do you keep talking about the 70s? Is that the only era you remember? He never remembered the 80s. He never remembered the 90s. He never remembered anything in 2000. It was always the 70s. And he said it's because the 70s was the best time in my life. It was the best years. And so it was his way of kind of reliving that experience, basically. And so once you understand the reason why they repeat it, then you can be a bit more tolerant. But some people, it could be something, and they might not even be willing to disclose to you the reason why they're repeating it. And you might have to either work it out, or if you think it's just an excuse to keep you on the phone, then you can kind of say, look, enough's enough. You said, I've heard that story. I'm not quite sure if you realize you've told me that before, but if there's nothing else, I do have something that I need to attend to at this time. I don't think they'll like it. They'll probably complain, and they'll probably put you on some kind of guilt trip for cutting them short and all that kind of stuff. But I think they have to be aware about their behavior, and the fact that they're just talking for the hell of it, just to keep you engaged. So rather than be abrupt and saying, oh, why do you keep repeating? Do you have dementia or something? No, you say, do you think I'm not listening? Did you realise you told me that before? Are you aware how often you repeat yourself? And they might say, bloody hell, no, I didn't realise I said that to you before. And they'll be more conscious. When they bring up that topic again, they'll be more conscious about it. And they probably might say, oh, I'm not sure if I told you this. And then you can say, oh, yes, you did. And then either they'll go quiet or they'll find another topic to talk about. But it needs to be patient. You need to steer the conversation to another topic if they have told you the same thing over and over again, and you do not feel as though you are equipped to kind of interpret what they want from you. and they're not telling you what they want from you. It's not like, I think some men, they feel as a bit embarrassed to kind of say, look, I don't really understand this, especially if they're articulating what somebody else said. You know, like some of them, they'll repeat whether it's Boris Johnson or whoever said something on the news, they don't quite understand it. They'll bring it up in a conversation and again and again. And it's really what they're trying to say is, look, I want to understand this. I don't understand it. Can you interpret it for me? But they're not going to say that. So you need to kind of think, you know, you've said that before. Is there something about it you don't understand? Is there something, you know? And they might say, yeah, well, whatever it is. Don't know what it is, but whatever it is. And you might be able to comment on it, or you might say, oh, I don't know either. I'm just as confused as you are. So sometimes when men repeat, it's out of guilt, something that they've done in the past that they feel responsible for, and they need to keep reviving it to see if they can try and, whether it's apportion blame or get over it or forgive themselves, whatever it is, they repeat. Sometimes it's out of loneliness, like I said. Sometimes it's craving a connection. They just repeat because they just want to keep someone on the phone. It's the only kind of communication they get. I've already talked about conversational narcissism. Sometimes they don't remember what they've said or who they've said it to, and they think it's the first time they're saying it to you. Sometimes they repeat because they fear not being taken seriously. Sometimes it's to fill uncomfortable silence. Some people don't like silence, you know, but I think we have to learn to live in silence, you know, allow silence sometimes. You don't have to fill every gap with something to say. Sometimes it's because we're unable to articulate. Like I said, you know, you've heard something, you're not quite sure whether you heard it correctly, you're not quite sure if you've articulated it correctly, and so you're looking for your partner or your spouse or whoever you're talking to kind of verify it for you or help you understand it. And those of you who are listeners to people who repeat, how are you responding? Are you being critical? Are you being impatient? Are you showing that you're bored? Are you being irritable? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? You know, those kind of responses are not necessary, because there's always a reason for people doing things. It's just that we do not know what that reason is. And if you care for that person, it's about just trying to think, I wonder why. Why does he keep repeating? What is it about that? Like if I'd never asked my friend, why do you keep talking about the 70s as though there was no other era? And if I hadn't asked that question and he hadn't responded, I wouldn't have had a clue. I would have just think, bloody hell, is he in a time warp? Did life stop at that point, after that point? Because it was like there was nothing before the 70s and nothing after the 70s, just the 70s. And that would be repeated time and time again. So, and what do you normally do when somebody repeats something? Do you tune out? Do you interrupt? Do you shut down? Do you listen politely and think, oh my God, not again? Do you joke about it? Do you confront? Do you complain? Do you snap? So I think if somebody's repeating, I think you could make a game out of it and say, look, if you repeat something more than twice, I'm going to put up a finger on how many times you've told it to me. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to put a finger up, a polite finger. And if you've told me twice, I'm going to put 2 fingers up like that. And so when he starts the conversation and you've already heard it, you just put up your 2 fingers. If he's going to say it 3 times, you put up your 3 fingers. So he knows, uh-oh, I've said this before. But it's just a nice, friendly way of letting him know, number one, he's told it to you before. Make sure it is the same thing he's telling you and not a different variation. But as long as the same thing he's telling you, you could do that. Okay, and always when you're communicating with people, regardless of how frustrated and angry and irritable you can get, try always to be loving and respectful, because people's behaviour and people's past, it has an influence on their present. And a lot of times it's because of something that's happened in their past why they're behaving like they are in the present. So it's about trying to understand that and ask a few questions instead of just assuming that they're just trying to deliberately annoy you or something. And that's all for now. Bye bye.